Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera. Selamat pagi everyone. Terima kasih kepada Dr. Milia, rakan-rakan pensyarah di Unsyah, Dr. Safrizal, Dr. Opta. So first of all, let me thank the organizing committee and friends in Universitas Shah Kuala for inviting me to be part of this disaster module, if I'm not mistaken. So it's an honor to have this opportunity to address such a distinguished audience. As Dr. Milia mentioned, let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Hisham Issa, emergency physician from Hospital Chancellor Tuanku Mukhris, Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia. So first of all, saya nak tanyalah apa khabar mahasiswa-mahasiswi sekalian. So harapnya semoga semua sihat-sihat belaka di sana. As Dr. Safrizal pointed out, sekarang ni hujan lebat di Malaysia, di Kuala Lumpur juga hujan Yesterday berlaku banjir banyak kereta tenggelam di some part in Kuala Lumpur. It's quite serious hujan So rupanya di Aceh juga hujan Dr. Milia
Hujan dok, lebat.
Yes. Okay. Alright. So as you can see, our topic today is about principle in outbreak management and COVID-19 updates. My talk is relevant in this current situation where we are still facing with this pandemic. So untuk perhatian mahasiswa-mahasiswi sekalian, if you look at the disaster phase, you have like preparedness phase, and then the disaster happen, and then you have to respond to the disaster, and then you have a recovery phase and mitigation phase. So what we are doing now, the lecture, teaching, learning about the COVID is the preparation phase. So we are preparing ourselves in order to face bencana. Okay, so hanya semua mahasiswa-mahasiswi faham bahawa sekarang ini kita di dalam fasa preparedness before bila disaster happen, and then we have to face the disaster and we have to respond to the disaster. Okay, so let's move on. So these are the learning outcome. So in this presentation about 1 hour, I would like to concentrate on the definition of the outbreak. Okay, and I will give some other definition like what is epidemic, what is pandemic, what is endemic. We're going to define that, and then kita akan tengok the steps in outbreak investigations. This is the most important part in the slides. Because the management of outbreak is about we need to investigate that outbreak. And then we proceed with the management of outbreak, and I'm going to talk briefly on how to prevent future pandemic. And last but not least, I'm going to share some info about COVID-19 with you all. Okay, are we good?
Good.
Okay. All right. So this is the definition of an outbreak. Apa itu outbreak? Kita start dengan outbreak. So outbreak, if there are 2 or more linked cases of an illness, you can say it's an outbreak. Or a single case of an unusual or rare infection. For example, case-nya agak tidak banyak tetapi rare, contoh foodborne botulism, or if you can find bioterrorism agent like anthrax. This is very serious. If you can find anthrax, you can declare outbreak. Walaupun satu pesakit sahaja atau satu patient sahaja admitted to your emergency department with anthrax, then you can call it outbreak. Or many cases. Or a greater than expected rate of infection compared with the usual background rate that is expected in that population, for that place of time. Or in short, a sudden rise in the incidence of the disease. Itu bermaksud outbreak, ya. Okay, don't worry, I give you an example. Outbreak, ya. In short, it is small but unusual. Example, let's say you have 15 children in daycare, came down to emergency department ataupun klinik kesihatan ataupun to puskes, ya. Puskes with diarrhea all at once, ya. So you can declare this is the outbreak of food poisoning, for example, ya. So itu bermaksud outbreak. So harap mahasiswa-mahasiswa faham ini adalah outbreak, ya. Kemudian we go to the epidemic, ya. What is epidemic? Epidemic is an outbreak over a larger geographic area. Okay. Meaning from outbreak, if the outbreak spreading to a larger geographic area, we call it epidemic. It's a bigger and is a spreading, yeah. Example, you all know, right? The COVID-19 is from Wuhan, yeah. During that time, when people outside Wuhan, yeah, people outside Wuhan began testing positive for infection of COVID-19, then WHO declared epidemic. Okay, still in China, yeah, still in that province, but outside Wuhan, yeah. We don't call pandemic yet, but we call epidemic, yeah. From outbreak become epidemic. Now look at the pandemic then. Pandemic is an epidemic that spread in several countries. The moment COVID spread outside China, we call it pandemic, yeah. Example, a sick traveler with COVID-19 who returned to Malaysia from China and caused local outbreak in Malaysia, then that is the time we call it pandemic. Okay, hopefully students now understand what is from the outbreak become epidemic, now become pandemic, yeah. There's one more thing that you all need to understand is endemic, yeah. What is endemic? The usual level of disease within a geographic area, yeah. The key point here is the disease that is always present, yeah. Disease is always present. That is the key point. Ataupun another key point is constantly present, yeah, at a baseline level in certain population or origin. Example, kalau ada penyakit denggi, malaria, ya, itu adalah endemik, ya. Melainkan denggi tiba-tiba menjadi banyak kes, then we can call it outbreak, ya. But at the moment, our malaria cases, our dengue cases quite stable within the baseline level, so we call it endemic. If you look at this global picture, ya, tengok dekat global picture ni ada endemic, ada epidemic, ada pandemic, ya. You look at the dots, ya. Kalau endemic, ya, you can see that dot is constantly present, but only single dot, ya, throughout the country. Whereas epidemic, you can see there's a cluster of dots, ya, in a certain area. Whereas in pandemic, there are clusters of dots, but spreading throughout the globe, yeah. So basically that is endemic. So now hopefully you all understand what is outbreak, what is epidemic, what is pandemic and endemic, yeah. And if you look at this graph, yeah, this is the graph of epidemic and endemic, yeah. The y-axis is the cases of illness and the x-axis is the time, yeah. If you look over time, yeah, the epidemic, the cases coming down trend, yeah, and become stable. So from the epidemic or outbreak, when the case coming down and stable, then we can say this is the endemic. Okay, hopefully you understand that. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, let's review some history. So what I want to show you, these are the among worst outbreak in the history. I just pick up some, yeah. First, the Black Death by plague, yeah, happened around 1346 to 1353, yeah, and it was believed to originated in Asia. Because of this plague, yeah, the death toll is about 200 million, yeah. There were 200 million deaths because of the plague. That was in 1346, yeah. And then from the history, we move on to cholera pandemic, yeah. It was 1852 until 1860, yeah. And this cholera pandemic, believe it was originated in India and it claimed 1 million people death because of the cholera pandemic. And then we move on to flu pandemic in 1889 into 1890. So mind you, flu there were many waves Dia bukan satu wave saja, dia ada banyak flu dalam history kita So in this case people call it Russian flu because of this Russian flu 1 million people died And then this is flu pandemic of 1918 a death toll about 50 million people across around the globe. Okay, this was the most severe pandemic in history for information. So the first outbreak of flu-like illness was detected in US. The interesting part, because during 1918 the US was engaged in World War I and 100,000 of US soldiers traveled across the Atlantic for war mission. So the mass troop movement contributed to the global spread of flu. So disebabkan oleh pergerakan askar-askar daripada US, maka tersebar luaslah flu pandemic of 1918. Maka banyak negara terlibat so sehingga kematiannya sehingga 50 million people And then I think you all still remember this SARS outbreak in 2002 and 2003 It was originated in Guangdong province in China not much death, about 774 people but it's quite scary during that time SARS 2002 And then we heard about H1N1 I think you all also still remember H1N1 swine flu pandemic in 2009 and 2010 and it was believed originated in Mexico and death at that time about 580,000 people. Okay, that was swine flu pandemic. And then Middle East syndrome, respiratory syndrome coronavirus, MERS-CoV so was reported in Jeddah Saudi Arabia. Was started in 2012 until now and until now about 886 people died because of the MERS-CoV so if you notice now most umrah operator avoid visit to camel farm dulu apabila kita pergi umrah kebanyakan ejen travel agency akan bawa kita melawat ladang unta untuk selfie usap-usap muka unta, selfie, minum susu unta yang tak masak. So this is the source of MERS-CoV. So most of the travel agency now they prohibited the people to go to this visit the camel farm because 35% of infected MERS-CoV patient died. So it's quite serious issue. And then against the HIV/AIDS pandemic, still until now, but the peak at 2005 until 2012, it was believed originated in Congo, in 1976. Till now, the death toll about 36 million, because of the HIV/AIDS. And last but not least, the latest history is COVID-19 pandemic, reported from Wuhan, China. And then I will give you a latest figure for the death toll due to COVID-19 after this. Okay, I think this is the history of pandemic in our world, in global. So now let's look at the types of outbreak. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, there are many ways to classify types of outbreak. Kamu boleh pecahkan jenis-jenis outbreak itu kepada berbagai. One is community acquired, meaning contoh measles, food poisoning, or hospital or healthcare acquired, like pneumonia. Or you also can divide the types of outbreak into common source or propagated source. Apa itu common source? What is a common source? All victim acquire the infection from the same source. Itu common source. Contoh contaminated water supply. Contoh ada pencemaran kepada water supply, maka semua orang yang minum air itu mendapat penyakit, ya, dapat outbreak. Okay. Or a propagated, ya, transmission occur from person to person, ya. Contoh COVID-19 lah. Itu cara kita divide the types of outbreak, ya. So far okay kan?
Adik-adik gimana?
Ada bagaimana? Okey kan? Boleh respon pelajar?
Bisa ngerti kah adik-adik sekalian?
Bisa dokter.
Alhamdulillah. Okey, saya teruskan. Okey. Jadi, remember I said perkara paling penting dalam management of outbreak is investigate the outbreak, ya. So sebelum itu, sebelum saya pergi kepada investigation of the outbreak, we must know what are the aim of outbreak investigation, ya. So there are many, ya. I put it here 8 aim of outbreak investigation. Yang pertama, prevent further disease transmission. Of course, kita kena investigate supaya kita tahu penyakit apa yang kita sedang hadapi and we can limit the disease transmission. Second, we want to provide information that can be used to control the outbreak, yeah. Based on the investigation, we can get some information to control the outbreak. The third one, we want to prevent similar occurrence in the future. Itu juga adalah aim of the outbreak investigation. And the number 4, we want to identify who are the population at risk of the disease. Sama ada ia melibatkan orang tua, sama ada ia melibatkan orang yang ada penyakit-penyakit tertentu, sama ada ia melibatkan gender. Mungkin ada setengah-setengah penyakit, mungkin prone kepada wanita atau prone kepada lelaki, ya. Or mungkin race yang tertentu, ya. Kalau di Malaysia ini mungkin ada Melayunya, ada Cina, ada India dan lain-lain, ya. So we can actually identify that, ya. And we can identify modes of disease transmission, ya. Sama ada through oral, through fecal, through contact, or we can evaluate the effectiveness of infection control measures. We learn more about the disease, including the impact of control measures, and last but not least, the aim of outbreak investigation to share knowledge, because once we able to investigate, we document it properly, we publish in the journal, and other countries, other people, other healthcare personnel can read about that disease, yeah. So basically, adik-adik semua, this is the aim of outbreak investigation. Okay. And you might ask me, doktor, ya, siapakah yang perlu ada di dalam tim untuk investigate, ya, the outbreak investigation team, ya. So first, you must have epidemiologists, ya, pakar dalam bidang epidemiologi, ya. Kemudian you must have a clinician, alright. Of course, you need a microbiologist to look at the pathogen, and then let's say the outbreak happened or occurred in the hospital or in the ward, so you need member of infection control unit, and then you need staff from affected unit or ward or hospital, and of course other departments or others member depending on the need, yeah. So basically these are the teams yang akan menjalankan kajian berkenaan dengan outbreak, ya. Okay, so now kita sampai kepada slide yang penting, ya. So this is the outline steps of outbreak investigation, ya. I'm gonna talk one by one about these steps, ya. So first is establish the existence of an outbreak. Step yang pertama, kita kena verify the existence of the outbreak. Betul ke wujudnya outbreak, ya? Step yang kedua, kita confirm the diagnosis, ya. We confirm that the outbreak is happening and we identify, ya, what is the agent involved, ya. Ini bakteria ke, ini due to virus ke, ini due to parasite, kita confirm the diagnosis. The third step is we establish the case definition and count case, ya. Ini penting. Because apabila seseorang itu dijangkiti, kita nak tahu adakah orang yang dijangkiti itu mempunyai simptom and sign yang sepertinya, ya. Jadi we need to set a standard criteria, the case definition, ya. And then step number 4, to relate the outbreak to the time, place, and person. And then we have to formulate hypothesis. So at that beginning, we need to use our best guess at that time, yeah, to formulate a good hypothesis. The moment we have the hypothesis, we have to test our hypothesis. That's step number 6, yeah. And the subsequent step, we need to finding the point of contamination. Kat mana punca pencemaran ini, ya, sama ada daripada sungai, daripada makanan atau sebagainya. Kita akan berbicara lebih lanjut berkenaan ini, ya. And then step yang ke-8 is epidemiologic investigation. You have to create the graph and so on. And then the step number 9, you have to monitor and evaluate the control measures. So ini juga adalah point yang sangat penting yang kita akan bicara, bagaimana kita nak monitor and how are we going to evaluate the control measures. And the last one, we have to prepare the report and disseminate it, the report to others. Yeah. Okay, that is the 10 steps of outbreaks. Yeah. So let's look one by one. Okay, number 1, as I mentioned, we have to establish the existence of an outbreak. Kita kena verify dulu. Apa caranya? Compare current information with previous incident in the community during the same time of year to determine if the observed number of cases exceed or not. Ya, kadang-kadang contoh macam saya bagi tahu tadi denggi, ya. Denggi setiap tahun ada, ya. Malaria setiap tahun ada. Tetapi mungkin pada certain masa, contohnya tiba-tiba pada bulan Januari, tiba-tiba kes jadi banyak. Jadi kita compare, adakah pada bulan Januari tahun lepas, ya, tahun 2020, kesnya sebanyak ini berbanding pada tahun ini. Jika tahun ini terlalu lebih, maka we can say it's an outbreak. Itu contoh, ya. So if yes, you can consider then that an outbreak exists, ya. If no, then you have to justify why it's not an outbreak. So in order to do that, to search for the additional cases and information, we need help from our public health colleague. Yeah, we need to gather reports of illness. We need help from the doctor and microbiologist to notify us in case ada case yang banyak datang ke kecemasan, ke puskes, ya. Then public health officials to look at the reports, or astute clinician, or the specimen collected, ya. And then the microbiologist will identify the organism. So ini cara untuk kita verify. So the moment we verify, we need to confirm the diagnosis. So step number 2, basically to confirm the diagnosis, yeah. What diagnosis has been established? Is it what? COVID? Is it cholera? Is it dengue? Yeah? What agent has been identified? Was it bacteria? Was it virus? Or fungus? Or what? So you have to determine that. All right. And you have to, of course, analyze clinical history of cases, yeah, have a standard lab to perform or confirm or reject your suspected diagnosis, yeah. So basically, step number 2 settle, we confirm the diagnosis, yeah. Now, step number 3, we have to establish the case definition. So as I mentioned, when people ask this patient has the disease or not, then we need to refer to a case definition, yeah, because case definition will give you a standard set of criteria for deciding whether an individual should be classified as a case or not, ya. Katakan ada pesakit datang ke emergency, ya, ataupun datang ke klinik, ya, ke puskes, mengadu sakit. Jadi sebelum kita kata seseorang itu ada COVID, kita kena tengok apakah tanda-tanda, apakah simptom-simptom yang dihadapi oleh pesakit itu. So ini merujuk kepada case definition, yeah, and must be applied consistently and without bias to all PUI patient, no, ataupun person under investigation, yeah. Okay, so how to classify a case? Ada 3, right? Confirm case meaning ada sign and symptoms and patient has a laboratory confirm. Kalau probable, typical patient has typical clinical features but no lab confirmation. And if possible or suspected, the patient has a fewer of typical clinical features. Yeah. So these are the classification of cases. Yeah, whether confirmed, probable, or possible. Okay. Now kita pergi ke steps yang keempat. Ya, relate the outbreak to time, place, and person. Yeah. So we have to characterize the outbreak according to person, to time, and place Maksudnya kita kena interview pesakit-pesakit itu ya, when they become ill. Maksudnya kita nak tahu the incubation period ya, from the exposure to dapat symptoms. So berapa hari daripada dia contoh kalau food poisoning, dia makan di satu kedai sehingga mendapat cirit-birit, sehingga mendapat muntah-muntah, berapa lama? So time of exposure. And next question is where they become infected. Restaurant, facility, hospital, or di rumah, or local, district, state. So we need to determine that. And then we need to know who they are. What is their age group ya? Sama ada this is the elderly punya case ataupun young age or pediatric. What's their gender ya? Sama ada prone to female or male. Or what is their race ya? Certain especially in US ya, dia ada race tertentu like African, they prone to get certain disease for example ya. So kita kena buat kajian sebegitu rupa ya. Selepas kita buat step ini, kita bergerak kepada formulate a tentative hypothesis ya. Alright. So bagaimana untuk kita buat hypothesis? We have to address to these four ya. Kita kena tahu apakah reservoirnya, kita kena tahu source of the agent, kita kena tahu mode of transmission, and we need to know the exposure that cause the disease ya. Jadi untuk membuatkan kita semua lebih faham, sila lihat dekat chain of infection ini ya. You tengok nombor 1 ya. Jadi apakah infectious agent yang terlibat? Kita kena tahu. Adakah ianya virus seperti COVID-19? Adakah ianya bakteria ataupun parasite ya? Kemudian pergi ke nombor 2, kita tengok apakah reservoirnya. Adakah ianya people? Okey. Adakah ianya animal ya? Animal pun boleh menjadi reservoir, ataupun makanan, food, ataupun water supply ya, boleh menjadi reservoir kepada agent itu tadi ya. Kemudian dia masuk, dan kita kena tahu bagaimana transmission itu berlaku pula. Adakah melalui kontak, sentuhan ya, adakah melalui droplet, kalau batuk keluar cecair ya, ataupun adakah melalui vektor ya, seperti mosquito ya, ataupun melalui makanan ya, dan sebagainya. Itu transmission. And lastly, you need to know the exposure ya. Exposure kepada host itu adakah melalui mulut, melalui skin ya, kulit yang tercedera, ataupun melalui mata ya, dan juga darah. So ini antara perkara-perkara dalam chain of infection that you have to study and determine. Alright. Kemudian the next step is you test the hypothesis ya. Ini is a bit complicated. Kalau kurang faham pun tidak mengapa ya. Ini adalah epidemiologist punya kerja ya. So basically mereka perlu test the hypothesis ya. There are 2 general study design that can be used to do this analytical epidemiology ya. Apa yang mahasiswa-mahasiswi perlu mengetahui, hanya ada 2 cara, iaitu menggunakan cohort study ataupun case control study ya. So secara ringkas, apa yang saya boleh explain di sini adalah cohort study ianya jika population yang terkena penyakit itu well defined population, dan kita boleh contact each attendee. Saya bagi contoh ya. Katakan berlaku food poisoning among wedding guests. Okay? Katakan kamu pergi makan kenduri ya. Adakah di Indonesia juga sebut kenduri ya? Wedding guest ya. Kenduri kahwin ya. Jadi kamu pergi kenduri kahwin, kamu makan, kamu minum, balik rumah kamu mendapat muntah-muntah, kamu mendapat sakit perut ya, demam dan sebagainya. Jadi kita boleh pergi kepada tuan rumah, dapatkan senarai tetamu jemputan, dan kita boleh interview seorang-seorang. Okay, so kita menggunakan cohort study. We compare the ill versus non-ill. Okay, tetapi kalau population yang not well defined ya, kita tidak tahu ya di mana puncanya. Kalau tadi kenduri kahwin, kita tahu rumah Encik Ali ya, ada kenduri kahwin, jadi kita boleh pergi di situ. Tetapi kalau case control, we don't know. The population is not well defined, so we have to use a case control ya. Itu saja yang boleh saya explain buat masa sekarang ya. Alright, so next is we need to find the point of contamination. Contoh lagi, food poisoning ya. So sebagai contohnya inspektor kesihatan ya, they have to go and find, they have to assess the environment. Pergi ke restoran itu, for example, assess the environment, right? And check who cooked the meal, yeah, who cooked the food, what's the ingredient that they used, yeah, and is they follow any steps, what's the temperature of the food, yeah, and they also should know what's the health status of the workers. So this is how you find the point of contamination. Kalau point of contamination, kalau daripada sumber air, then you have to go to the river, to the dam, and check the water supply. Yeah, so that is the step number 7. Yeah, and step number 8 is epidemiologic investigation. Yeah, so you dah buat investigation, so you summarize and interpret all the information that has been collected. Yeah, examine the lab result. Yeah, and construct with the information. You construct epidemic curve. Yeah. I'm going to show you some epidemic curve ya, untuk kita faham. Okay, guys. So this is one of the epidemic curve ya. Hanya perlu tengok saja, tak faham pun tak apa sangat. Yang pertama adalah point source outbreak ya. Ini adalah point source outbreak punya graph ya. Apa maksud point source outbreak? It's an outbreak of disease or illness in which the susceptible individual itu expose simultaneously. Bermaksud macam rumah kenduri tadi ya. Dia semua orang pergi makan di satu rumah yang ada kenduri. Makannya adalah makanan yang sama, lauk ayam, ada nasi, ya, ada acar. Apa lagi ya Dr. Milia di Indonesia makanan-makanan kenduri ya?
Rendang, Dr.
Oh, rendang. Yes, rendang ayam, rendang daging ya. Jadi mereka ni makan pada masa yang sama. Sekurang-kurangnya katakan kenduri bermula pukul 12 tengah hari hingga pukul 4 petang ya. Jadi semua orang makan benda yang sama. Maka apabila you tabulate the graph, you will find one peak ya, one peak. Dan setiap peak ini kamu boleh kira bilakah incubation period mereka itu. Berbanding propagated graph ya. Ini adalah graph person to person. Kalau kamu boleh lihat di sini ada berbagai peak ya. Ada peak pertama, peak kedua dan peak ketiga ya. Because kita tidak boleh tentukan bila seseorang itu dijangkiti kan. Mungkin ada yang dijangkiti hari ini, ada yang dijangkiti esok, ada yang dijangkiti seterusnya. Jadi dia ada banyak peak dan setiap peak itu boleh menunjukkan the incubation period tersendiri. So adik-adik, so ini adalah contoh-contoh epidemiology graph yang terhasil daripada investigation yang kita lakukan ya. Next is kita dah ada maklumat, we have all the information, then we need to evaluate, monitor and evaluate the control measures ya. So as soon as possible we have to implement the control measures ya. Aim at the specific agent, source or reservoir ya. Aim control measures at the weak link in the chain of infection. Apakah chain of infection dan di mana weak linknya? Tengok di sini ya. Pathogen kepada source, source to the mode, mode to susceptible host ya. So the weak link is at the mode ya. So kita kena pecahkan rantaian infeksi ini ya dekat mode of infection, because inilah paling mudah ya untuk kita tackle. To make you more understand, to get a clearer picture ya, ini adalah chain of infection ya, organism, source, mode of transmission and host ya. Jika dilihat apakah organismnya, it could be bacteria, virus, parasite and fungus. Source, it could be the patient ya, the human, or the equipment ya, medication, surfaces, river, water supply, soil, tanah, itu semua boleh menjadi source of organism. Jadi apakah mode of transmissionnya? Contoh-contohnya contact ya, direct or indirect, ataupun melalui droplets or melalui airborne ya. Dan hostnya siapa? The host is a person who become infected after exposure. Jadi apa yang kita perlu buat, management of outbreak adalah kita perlu break the chain ya. We need to break this chain, whether you break at the organism level or you break this at the source level or you break at the mode of transmission or at the host. So how to break at the organism? Contohnya, you make the organism become inactive or neutralize the pathogen ya. Boleh antibiotik dan sebagainya. So how to remove the source? You have to isolate cases ya. Ingat tadi salah satu source adalah manusia. Jadi jika manusia itu dijangkiti kuman macam COVID, kita boleh quarantine. Itu cara kita break the chain ya. Ataupun interrupt the transmission, ya, mode of transmission. Apa mode transmission yang kita cakap tadi? Iaitu airborne, droplet ya. So bagaimana nak, ataupun vector. Jadi bagaimana nak break the transmission? Kita control vector. Contoh nyamuk ya, kita control nyamuk. Kita punya personal hygiene ya, pakai mask ya, wear mask, good cough etiquette ya, hand hygiene. Ini semua adalah cara-cara untuk break the chain for mode of transmission ya. Ataupun kita boleh modify host response ya. Contoh macam sekarang kita dapat vaksin. Ini adalah salah satu cara untuk break the chain of infection, dapat vaksin kepada host ya. Ataupun kita bagi prophylactic medication ya. Untuk contohnya ada orang nak masuk hutan ya, askar yang nak masuk hutan ataupun kita nak pergi ke negara-negara tertentu ya, kita boleh makan ubat-ubat prophylaxis ya untuk malaria seperti chloroquine, doxycycline dan sebagainya. So ini adalah contoh-contoh bagaimana cara kita break the chain. Okay, so saya harap semua faham setakat itu. And then selepas itu step yang terakhir, kita prepare and disseminate a final report ya. So apa yang kena ada dalam report? We describe the outbreak intervention and the effectiveness. We summarize the contribution of each team member yang participate dalam investigation ya. And then you write a recommendation for a future to prevent future occurrence of the outbreak of pandemic. Itu sahaja berkenaan dengan step-step bagaimana cara untuk kita investigate the outbreak. Okey, seterusnya kita bincang sedikit berkenaan dengan bagaimana kita nak decide the outbreak is over ya. Outbreak is over when the number of new illness reported drops ya, back to the normal level. Dah tidak jadi banyak kes sudah. So the epidemic curve help investigators see that illness are declining. Balik kepada graf-graf tadi ya. Daripada graf kita boleh tahu. Jadi public health officials still continue surveillance dan juga mereka perlu continue or restart the investigation if cases start occurring again. Okay, next is management of outbreak in institution ya. Jika berlaku outbreak di ward, di rumah orang tua, rumah kebajikan, institution, mana-mana saja ya. So each facilities should have a plan in place for routine surveillance ya. And for outbreak investigation is a team approach. It must involve infection control nurse, should be informed. Yeah, and we should also involve the public health for the intervention and their expertise. Yeah, and we need to consult the public health inspector and infection control nurse. Yeah, because they are responsible for a communicable disease. Yeah. All right. So next is how to prevent a future pandemic. Yeah. All right. So to answer this, how to prevent a future pandemic depends on what is the problem. Contoh kalaunya ia melibatkan waterborne pathogen ya. So apa WHO buat ya? In order to control the transmission of waterborne pathogen. Seperti contohnya Vibrio cholera ya. Vibrio cholera yang menyebabkan outbreak of cholera. Jadi WHO has launched a water sanitation and hygiene program. They call it WASH program. So mahasiswa-mahasiswi nanti selepas ini jika ada masa boleh Google what is WASH program by the WHO. So basically this program emphasize the provision of safe and clean source of water, effective sanitation infrastructure and ensure appropriate hygiene practice. Itu jika melibatkan waterborne pathogen. Jika melibatkan vector control, ini interesting I'm going to tell you. Vector control is the primary tool to control vector-borne diseases. Seperti apa Malaria, dengue, chikungunya, Zika virus. Ini semua disebabkan oleh vector. Jadi kita kena control this vector. So this method can target either the immature stage daripada peringkat lavanya or kalau dia adult vector itu kita boleh menggunakan nets kelambu, menggunakan repellents insecticide and spraying Yang interesting yang saya nak cerita di sini ialah novel vector control methods is under development now, and some country they already use it, the genetic manipulation of mosquito. This is interesting project, di mana they release male mosquito, male genetically engineered mosquito, to mate with female population of Aedes aegypti. Okey, kita tahu bahawa Aedes aegypti boleh membawa penyakit dengue, Zika, chikungunya, yellow fever, Jadi the genetically engineered male mosquito ini akan carry a gene that passes to their offspring, and kill female mosquito. And then this male offspring won't die, but instead will become carriers of the gene and pass it to the future generation. So interesting, they create a mosquito that can kill another mosquito. So dengan cara ini mereka melepaskan nyamuk ke kawasan yang ada banyak female Aedes aegypti, dan nyamuk lelaki ini akan this genetically engineered mosquito boleh menyebabkan kematian kepada nyamuk-nyamuk betina ataupun female mosquito ini, So that's very interesting. Now, lagi cara untuk kita prevent future pandemic adalah melalui global surveillance, The implementation of global surveillance program for the rapid detection of pathogen spillover, from animal to the human population. So WHO create a One Health concept. So this is another things that you all can Google after this, One Health concept. They promote optimal health for human, animal, and environment, And lastly, is about viral zoonosis. What is viral zoonosis? Disease transmissible from vertebrate animal to the human. Sepertinya pandemik ini, COVID-19, difahamkan daripada bat kepada pangolin, ataupun apa itu pangolin, di Malaysia kita panggil pangolin itu binatang apa, cengkering. Ataupun nanti saya tunjuk gambar, Okay. So viral zoonosis ini constitute a particularly a serious threat to the public health, Jadi kita juga kena control this viral zoonosis, Okay, so saya rasa this is the I've settled the first part of my presentation, hopefully you all can understand how to investigate the outbreak, and then how to manage the outbreak and how to prevent a future outbreak. Okay, and then we move on to second part of the presentation. This is about COVID-19 pandemic. I'm going to share with you some updates and where are we now, in this era of COVID-19, Okay. Current global situation, as of yesterday, on the 27th of September 2021, there were more than 232 millions of confirmed cases, all right. And this, okay, hold on, I want to show this, the situation by WHO region, Sorry, we are in Southeast Asia. The case was about 42 million, as compared to America and Europe, we are in the third. Okay, and then as of yesterday, there were more than 4.7 million deaths worldwide. That's quite horror. Okay, this slide I want to show you about the reproduction number. How contagious is the new coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2 ini, You compare the influenza virus to the COVID-19, SARS, MERS, and measles, You look at the influenza, Okay, what is reproduction number, The expected number of cases directly generated by one case, Satu case of influenza boleh menghasilkan 1.5 number of cases. Alright? And look at the COVID-19, Satu pesakit COVID-19, boleh reproduce 4.9 patients, So ini menunjukkan the contagious, SARS, satu patient SARS up to 5 patients, MERS up to 8, and measles, very contagious, One measles can infect up to 20 another human being, So roughly our COVID as compared to influenza is about double, double of the influenza, So this is how the contagious our SARS-CoV-2 virus. Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here I'm going to show you some overview. Overview of the COVID-19 pandemic. WHO outlined 5 stages of COVID-19 pandemic. We are in a stage 5 now, but let's go through stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and stage 4. Okay, stage 1 is an unknown virus emerges, and stage 2, a pandemic unfold. Stage 3, the pandemic accelerate. Stage 4, a multifaceted pandemic, and the stage 5 is medical countermeasures, So we are in the stage 5. Now, what is stage 1, If you look at an earlier stage where we shock with unknown virus emerges. So at that time, an unusual cluster of severe pneumonia cases identified in China, risking question about a possible new disease. That was December 2019, Some cases are linked to a seafood market in Wuhan, Hubei province in China. Some patients die, especially older patients, with comorbids, And they also found that this is due to coronavirus. Now they can recognize it as a coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2 virus, and linked to the infect animal and human, And the infection causes respiratory disease ranging from mild to severe disease. So by January 5th, 2020, WHO issued first disease outbreak news, at that time during stage 1. Okay, and as I mentioned, this is the pangolin, tenggiling, Di Indonesia dipanggil apa ini binatang ini? Ini. Kita di sini dipanggil tenggiling.
Tenggiling. Ya,
sama ya. So how the SARS-CoV-2 origin? Dikatakannya from bat to a mammal or pangolin, then to human in November, December, Di China mereka menggunakan pangolin ini untuk medicine, And they also link to seafood or exotic animal market that can cause spreading of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Okay, we settle the stage 1. We move to stage 2. Stage 2, March 2020. A pandemic unfold. At that time, over 120,000 cases, over 4,000 death occurred. And what make it worse, there was a mass gathering, such as a religious event in the city of Daegu, in South Korea, and religious gathering in Qom, Iran, and a Champion League football match in Italy, Bergamo, Italy. So this play a key role in the spreading of the COVID-19. So in March 11, 2020, WHO characterized the outbreak as a pandemic. So during stage 2, the WHO March 2020 declare pandemic. Okay, so this slide just want to show you how COVID-19 respond. Number 1, there are no reported cases. Number 2, there's a sporadic cases. Number 3, cluster of cases. Number 4, community transmission. Apa maksud sporadic cases? Kalau boleh tengok di gambar itu, sporadic cases bermaksud 2 or more cases. Sporadic cases that has been detected in the community but unable to link to any cluster. Jadi cases itu berlaku situ satu tempat, sini satu tempat, sana satu tempat, is a sporadic. Tetapi cluster bermaksud berlaku 2 or more cases. Jika dilihat di situ, berlaku satu tempat, di tempat yang sama, lokaliti yang sama, di dalam kumpulan yang sama, berlaku jangkitan melebihi 2 orang, maka itu dikira cluster of cases. The worst is the community transmission, di mana berlaku jangkitan tetapi you tidak boleh link kepada infected patient, walaupun you tidak ada kontak dengan pesakit COVID, tetapi berlaku transmission dalam community. Ini adalah worst response of COVID-19. So ketika stage ini, in order to flattening the curve, the government provide testing, they accelerate the testing process, contact tracing, and many countries at that time closed school, yeah, maybe until now, yeah, close the shop, close the working place, yeah, the bar or restaurant, even the border also closed, yeah, and the government asked the people to stay inside, stay home, yeah, to prevent spreading of the virus, yeah. And during this stage, yeah, health system also under pressure, yeah. Not only us in our developing country, but also in developed country, yeah, because we lack of PPE, oxygen, yeah, we have shortage of the ventilator and the test kit, yeah. That was during the stage 2. Now we move on to the stage 3, yeah, where the pandemic accelerate, yeah. The epicenter moved from Europe to the America. Yes. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Dr. Hisham,
Yeah.
some medical student also come from Thailand Selatan, so Thailand.
Oh. Okay.
So
Okay. All right. Okay. So basically during this time, yeah, is beyond the health crisis impact, ya. Masa inilah kerajaan juga ataupun WHO menyuruh kita, ya, avoid 3 C's, ya. C yang pertama crowded places, ya. C yang kedua close contact. C yang ketiga confined space, ya. So avoid crowded places, avoid close contact, and avoid confined space or enclosed spaces with poor ventilation. Alright. Kemudian kita pergi ke stage yang keempat, ya, multifaceted pandemic, ya. Pada ketika ini, ya, still berlaku transmission. Ada negara-negara yang sudah okey, kemudian menjadi second wave, menjadi third wave of COVID-19, ya. Juga ada negara-negara yang remain COVID free, ya, seperti New Zealand, ya. Sangat kagum, ya, bagaimana New Zealand masih boleh mengekalkan ketika itu, zero cases, ya. And pada ketika stage 4 itu, ya, pada 1 November there are nearly 46 million cases and over 1 million death, ya, berlaku ketika stage 4, dan global partnership accelerate development of pada masa inilah berlakunya development and production of the vaccine, the therapeutic and the diagnostic, ya. Untuk pengetahuan semua, so pada ketika stage 4 ini kajian telah dilakukan dan dexamethasone, ya, steroid has been confirmed as a useful therapeutic treatment for severe cases, and then penggunaan rapid antigen diagnostic test has been approved, ya. Dan pada stage 4 ini jugalah berlaku misinformation, disinformation, viral di dalam media sosial, ya, which complicate the picture of the COVID-19, ya. Some generated mistrust to the government and burden the public health, ya, and us as a doctor, ya. So banyak sangat viral fake news, ya, yang berlaku di dalam Facebook, Instagram, TikTok dan sebagainya, ya. Okay, now this is our stage now, stage 5, medical countermeasures available, ya. The increase of cases in Europe and the US, berlaku second wave, ya, continue. Vaccine sudah roll out, ya. As of 3rd March, ya, as of 3rd March 2021 this year, ya, more than 265 million vaccine doses have been administered, ya. Adanya from Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Sinopharm, Sinovac, and etc. Ya. But what I want to tell you, juga the new emerging variant, ya, as of July 2021, ya, there are already 4 dominant variant, ya. Jadi kita kena tahu bahawa sekarang ini COVID-19 sudah ada 4 variant yang utama, ya, yang dominan. Pertamanya adalah alpha variant, ya. It was from UK. Kemudian kita ada beta variant, ya, from South Africa. Kemudian you heard about gamma variant, ya, from Brazil, and latest adalah delta variant, ya, from India, ya. But alhamdulillah, because even though this variant ada di dalam community, but with the vaccine so far, all the vaccine company mentioned that their vaccine can cover all this variant, yeah. So hopefully okay. And all this variant involve genetic mutation, yeah. coding for the spike protein ya. Dan apa juga yang berlaku adalah economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, berlakunya problem kepada negara ya, contraction of the GDP economy ya, up to 115 million people ya living in extreme poverty ya because of the crisis ya. Begitu juga dengan ketiadaan kerja, working hours dan sebagainya ya. Okay, so what is known about COVID-19 so far, right? We knew that the virus is SARS-CoV-2 that caused COVID-19. All right, and this virus can result in a range of illness from mild symptom to severe illness ya. Tetapi kita tidak boleh mengetahui dengan tepat ya, because setiap pesakit body responnya berbeda ya. Ada pesakit dapat COVID tetapi tidak ada simptom ya. Ada pesakit dapat COVID terus langsung masuk ICU ya. Jadi we still don't know ya. And some people ya, elderly ataupun patient with comorbid ya, jika mereka ada diabetes, mereka obese ya, mereka ada cancer, especially on chemo or radiotherapy ya, the body protection become sudah lemah ya, weak body protection ya, ataupun mereka yang ada heart disease ya, mereka yang ada kidney problem, yang sedang buat dialysis. Jadi mereka ini tend to not perform well in COVID-19 ya. They become severely ill, and these are the candidates yang masuk ICU ya. Okay. Kita juga tahu bahawa the transmission adalah through droplet ya. Jadi apabila seseorang itu batuk, sneezing ya, all the droplet akan land on our mucosal surface ya. Especially your T-zone ya. Saya sendiri cukup susah untuk jaga T-zone ya. Suka gosok mata ya, gosok hidung, mulut ya. Kita kena avoid touching our T-zone ya, the eyes, the nose, the mouth ya, because droplet can go there. If we touch something and then we touch our T-zone, kita boleh dapat transmission ya. Next is aerosol ya. Okay, kalaulah kita di emergency department ya, adik-adik mahasiswa semua, di emergency department banyak prosedur yang kita lakukan boleh menghasilkan aerosol. Kita sebut aerosol generating procedure. Apakah prosedur yang boleh menghasilkan aerosol? Contohnya nebulizer ya, pesakit asma, pesakit COPD datang ke kecemasan, kita beri nebulizer ya. Ini boleh menghasilkan aerosol. Kita beri oksigen kepada pesakit ya, nasal prong, face mask, high flow mask ya, high flow nasal prong ya. Kalau low flow nasal prong, okay. High flow nasal prong, face mask ya, ini menyebabkan aerosol. Kamu intubasi pesakit, boleh menyebabkan aerosol. Kamu lakukan CPR ya tanpa protection, boleh menyebabkan aerosol generating procedure. Jadi ini adalah banyak perkara yang boleh menyebabkan transmission ya, terutama kepada kita sebagai pekerja kesihatan ya. Selain itu contact ya, contact dan juga ada possible routes ya through fecal material. Okay, next is incubation period. We knew that the incubation period is from 2 to 14 days ya. Some said 2 to 7 days ya. In general we can take up to 14 days ya. And CDC indicate that people more contagious ketika mereka ada symptom. The moment you start batuk, demam, this is the time you are very contagious. Tetapi ada juga studies yang mengatakan bahawa you become contagious before developing symptoms ya. Ini agak susah ya. Kadang-kadang apabila kita keluar ke tempat kerja, kita keluar ke fakultas ya, kita keluar ke hospital, ke shopping complex ya, beli belah ya, kita tidak tahu ya, orang tu mungkin tidak ada simptom, tidak batuk, tidak bersin, tetapi mereka adalah sangat mudah untuk menjangkiti orang ya, contagious ya. Hanya cukup saya bercakap sekarang, air liur ataupun particles ya boleh keluar dan boleh menjangkiti orang ya. Itu bahaya. Itu sebab kita kena jaga-jaga dan kita kena buat social distance ya. Alright, so about the treatment and vaccine, FDA telah meluluskan pemberian vaksin ya. Basically treatment untuk COVID adalah supportive ya. oksigen, ya, antiviral, thromboprophylaxis, ya, itu sahaja. Okay, basically kepada mereka yang mildly ill, mereka hanya isolate di rumah, home quarantine sahaja, ya, begitu. Kemudian sedikit berkenaan dengan vaksin, ya. So based on what is known about vaccine, ya, for other diseases, ya, expert believe that getting COVID-19 vaccine ini can prevent you from getting seriously ill when you get COVID-19, ya. Setengah orang memberi pandangan begini, ya. Kenapa kamu perlu memakai tali pinggang keledar ketika menaiki kereta? Kenapa kamu perlu memakai topi keledar ketika menaiki motosikal? Adakah dengan kamu memakai tali pinggang keledar, kamu boleh mengelak daripada aksiden kereta? Tidak, kan? Aksiden masih boleh berlaku, kan? Tetapi sekurang-kurangnya impact aksiden itu berjaya dikurangkan. Begitu juga dengan vaksin, ya. Apabila kamu ada vaksin COVID-19, ya, ia tidak menghalang kamu daripada dapat COVID, ya, tetapi dia mengurangkan impact daripada seriously ill after getting the COVID-19. Itu saja, ya. Alright, COVID-19 may increase the risk of long-term health problems. Saya nak dalam beberapa slide, ya, my subsequent slide, I'm going to talk about this long COVID syndrome, ya. Terlalu banyak sekarang pesakit datang ke emergency, ke puskes, ya, mengadu bahawa mereka ada long-term health problem kerana 3 bulan lepas, 4 bulan lepas mereka telah dijangkiti COVID, ya. So apa yang berlaku? Basically, it affect the cardiovascular, ya. Berlaku inflammation of the heart muscle, affect the respiratory, berlaku lung infection, lung function abnormalities, ya, rashes. In terms of neurologic, berlakunya loss of taste, smell, sleep disturbance, ya. Even selepas 4-5 bulan, ya, pesakit masih mengadu tidak boleh merasa, tidak boleh bau, tidak boleh merasa makanan, ya. And some of the psychiatric problem like depression, anxiety and change in mood, ya. Yeah. And some people feel that they do not fully recover from COVID-19, ya, despite many months or many weeks, ya. Result from the UK, ya, they investigate, ya, 1 in 10 respondent yang positif COVID may exhibit symptom for a period of 12 weeks or longer. Imagine, sudah ada jurnal yang memberitahu kita bahawa 1 daripada 10 orang yang dijangkiti COVID akan menghadapi masalah ini selepas 3 bulan, ya. And other studies indicate that around a third of people testing positive COVID had not returned to their usual state of health, ya, after 6 weeks, ya. And 30% of COVID-19 patients surveyed still had persistent symptom after 9 months, ya. Can you imagine that, ya? Selepas 9 bulan kamu masih ada tanda-tanda or symptoms of COVID, ya. Okay, so another aspect that we need to look at is a mental health, ya. So jangan sekali-kali lupa mental health. Banyak kes-kes, terutama di Malaysia pun ada banyak kes masyarakat publik menggantung diri, ya, kerana tertekan dengan kehidupan disebabkan oleh penyakit COVID-19 ini, disebabkan oleh keadaan ekonomi dan sebagainya, ya. So basically we need to advise them, ya, to have an adequate sleep, ya, healthy eating, avoid excessive caffeine, ya, exercise, ya, stay connected with your friends and family, enjoy yourself, ya, practice stress relief like breathing technique, exercise, ya, avoid unhealthy behavior like excessive drinking and so on, ya. So mental health is another things that we need to look at, ya. Jadi kalau di Malaysia ini kita ada talian, ya, sokongan psikososial COVID-19, ya. Jadi publik boleh telefon, ya, mengadu masalah, minta bantuan dan sebagainya menggunakan talian ini, ya. Okay, as I mentioned, I'm going to touch briefly on the long COVID, before I end this presentation, ya. Okay, so what is long COVID, ya? Kita bahagikan long COVID ini kepada 3, ya. One is acute COVID, ya. Acute COVID, patient has symptoms and sign up to 4 weeks, ya. Ongoing, they can go up to 3 months, ya. And post-COVID syndrome usually up to 3 months, ya. if patient came to us, ataupun jika ada saudara mara kita yang ada COVID, yang mengadu masih rasa lesu, letih, lemah, selepas 3 bulan menghadapi COVID, maka ini adalah post-COVID syndrome. Okey, kalau kita lihat usual clinical course of COVID, kalaulah mild COVID, selalunya up to 2 weeks you can recover. Some will go into severe, severe 3 to 6 weeks, most 6 weeks you can recover, and typically in general, as I mentioned, 6 weeks they can recover. Tetapi who gets long COVID then? 15% of the patients still symptomatic after 3 months. Siapakah mereka? Mereka yang tua, elderly. Mereka yang obesity, obese, somehow female, female tend to get long COVID, and those who have asthma and those who have multiple symptoms at presentation, katakan masa mereka mendapat COVID, mereka datang dengan fever, respiratory symptoms, GI symptoms, ada diarrhea, ada vomiting, neuro symptoms, ada anosmia, ada sleep disturbance and so on. So mereka ini tend to get long COVID. Now, what are the common symptoms in the long COVID? Generally, mereka ada fever, tak sembuh-sembuh demamnya, datang ke puskes, datang ke GP, complain of fever. Ada 60% complain of chest pain, complain rashes, anosmia. Kalau fatigue pula merasa general and post exertional fatigue, nak exercise rasa fatigue, ataupun merasa SOB, shortness of breath, 81%. Majority mengadu masih bernafas tidak selesa, ataupun batuk 63%. Musculoskeletal pain and muscle fatigue 72%, and some patient came in with headache, neurocognitive disease, difficult to concentrate, difficult to talk or speak, difficult to recall or memorize, atau dizziness, masih pening-pening, 46%, Ada juga datang with palpitation, postural tachy syndrome. Ada yang masih ada nausea, bowel changes, indigestion, Kalau sometimes tu diabetiknya menjadi haywire, worsening of the diabetic condition or other metabolic disease, and some psychiatric issue like sleep disorder and mood changes, So these are the common symptom pesakit datang kepada kita, So the role of primary care, the GP, the puskes, do a holistic approach, do a comprehensive clinical examination, history, do a physical examination thoroughly, exclude the certain pathology like pulmonary embolism, cancer, heart failure, anemia, and other uncontrolled diseases, and try to channel them to appropriate channel, like refer them to specialist services, or if nothing that we can offer, online resources also good. There's a group support, so patient can try to do that, Okay, so basically more research is needed to examine the long-term consequences of the COVID-19. And what is the response by the WHO? WHO designed a post-COVID case report form, we call it CRF, to collect, standardize clinical data, from individual after hospital discharge, All right. So that is all about WHO punya response. Okay. You familiar with this statement? Stay home and save life. I think we all familiar, right? So my question to you is whether this strategy is still valid or not. Why? Because many people wonder, has COVID-19 gone from pandemic to endemic now? Because if the pandemic ends, so the pandemic will end, when almost everyone has immunity, sama ada mereka mendapat melalui vaksin ataupun mereka dijangkiti oleh COVID dan mereka mendapat antibody secara natural, So once we see a stable case of COVID-19, mungkin COVID-19 ini tetap ada, tetapi nombornya bukan lagi menjadi ribu-ribu, macam di Malaysia sekarang daripada 20,000 cases daily turun menjadi 19, turun menjadi jadi 17 turun menjadi 10,000 ya. Hopefully kalau dia turun menjadi sekitar 4,000, we can declare it as an endemic ya. Okey. Okey, mahasiswa-mahasiswi sekalian, sila lihat kepada slide ini ya. Tujuan saya paparkan slide ini nak menunjukkan survey ya, among 119 immunologists, infectious disease researchers ya, and virologists from 23 countries ya. Mereka ini ditanya adakah COVID-19 boleh menjadi endemik ya. Lihat apa jawapan mereka ya. 60% menjawab very likely. Bermaksud COVID-19 ini mungkin tidak boleh dihapuskan sama sekali. Tapi ianya menjadi endemik dan kita akan hidup bersama-sama dengan COVID-19 ya. Hanya 5% say unlikely and 1% say very unlikely ya. Soalan yang kedua, how likely do you think that COVID can be eliminated from the region ya? Lihat, kebanyakan menjawab 35% say unlikely, 17 say very unlikely ya. Hanya sedikit sahaja menjawab COVID-19 boleh dihapuskan semuanya sekali ya. Okay, so while we are in Malaysia, expected maybe late October. Hopefully, jika semua rakyat Malaysia mencapai 80% ke 90% ya vaccination, so kita boleh mencapai negara endemik ya. Tetapi setiap negara akan masuk fasa endemik berbeza ya. Tidak semua negara akan masuk fasa endemik pada masa yang sama, bergantung kepada host, bergantung kepada environmental factor, bergantung kepada viral factor, and juga bergantung kepada vaccination rates ya. Hopefully jika negara kita Indonesia dan Malaysia sudah mencapai tahap vaksinasi yang bagus, maka kita boleh hidup dengan lebih aman di dalam keadaan endemik ya. Alright, so COVID-19 will likely shift from pandemic to endemic. But what does that mean ya? So meaning that jika berlaku endemic, we need to update the vaccine. Kemungkinan kita perlu mengambil vaksin ini setiap tahun seperti influenza vaksin ya. Dan apa juga yang berlaku, kita masih perlu memakai mask ya, masih perlu avoid close contact, masih perlu avoid poorly ventilated spaces, masih perlu hand sanitize, masih perlu avoid touching here and there ya, masih perlu menjaga diri kita dan sebagainya. So inilah yang berlaku ya. So as take home message ya, Dr. Milia dan rakan-rakan ya, dan mahasiswa sekalian ya, in battling the global COVID-19 pandemic ya, we cannot run from practice physical distances. We cannot run from practice avoid handshakes or touching. We cannot run from wash our hand frequently ya. So this is my reference. With that, I end my presentation. Thank you very, very much.